I just finished The Well of Ascension, which is book 2 in Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn Era 1. And I have feelings about this book, so I'm going to share them now in a spoiler-free review for Well of Ascension. There's a part of me that absolutely loves this book, and there's a part of me that acknowledges that this book has some weaknesses that can make it a little challenging to read. So let me explain why I'm going to be rating this book a 3.9 stars, a little bit less than book 1, which I believe I ranked at 4 stars, and why, unlike a lot of other people, I'm ranking this a little bit lower. Let's go pros and cons. Let me start with the pros. I thought that this book was really fun, especially towards the end. I think that every single surprise and twist did come as a surprise and twist. I was shocked by every reveal that this book gave us. I think it ended on such a powerful, amazing note. I immediately picked up the next book in the series. Even though I finished this book last night, I've already read about 30 pages of this book, which I am having a great time into. So the ending was phenomenal. I also think that this author has done a really good job exploring something that a lot of books don't explore, which is what happens after the final battle. What happens after you deal with some of the really big problematic things that have happened in the world? How do you rebuild after everything goes down, after all of the challenges and struggles of a revolution occur? And I have never actually read a book that I can think of that really does explore this. So I appreciate that this book did something really hard by doing that. I also think that the character arcs that exist in the story were really beautiful and, well, and tragic and heartbreaking, but they really did lend to a lot of really interesting thought processes that can excite the reader as they think about how some of these characters have developed, have broken, have become better, have become harder, have become just their, the progression of each of their arcs. I think this book did a really good job with that. One of the weaknesses I had for Mistborn book 1, I said that this book's romance felt very YA. And while I do think that this book still has an element of that, it feels like this book matures with our characters. The characters in this story are themselves young teenagers, I believe, and so it makes sense that they're engaging in young adult type romance. As they grow up and as they become older, we see their romance mature. And so I appreciate it doesn't mature into an angle of like this becoming a spicy book. This isn't a spicy book at all. However, I do think that the romance itself deepens and it becomes less surface level and more impactful, which I think was really beautiful and I really liked. I also mentioned that I thought this book could have used a little bit more battle scenes and a little bit more combat description. We definitely get that in this book. It's just going to take a while to get there. But for the big con of this book is it takes a while to progress to those beneficial points. I would say the first 350 pages of this 600-page book are a bit hard to get through. And that sucks because that's over half of the book. They're not bad. It's just that I spent the first 150 pages really annoyed with the main female character. I knew what Brandon Sanderson was doing. I understood what he was trying to convey in order to set up some of the growth that this character was going to experience in this book. But she annoyed me so much in the first section of this book. The romantic aspect as well was just kind of irksome. Again, I could understand conceptually what Brandon Sanderson was doing as he was setting up what the arcs were going to be for these characters in this book, how their relationship was going to continue to proceed and grow and develop, and I appreciate all of that. So I understood it, but it didn't stop me from being really annoyed for a good portion of the beginning of this book. One of the other characters who's off by himself, I really liked his parts, and I really liked reading his part of the story. It's not like I was completely annoyed throughout the entire beginning of this book, but I definitely had a little bit harder time. And honestly, it took a lot longer to read than I thought it was. So that's why I felt once I got to page 350, things started picking up. The last 100 pages are just absolutely fabulous and amazing. What a conclusion. I loved it. I was shocked and surprised. But I did feel like Mistborn book 1, although some of the surprises that happen in this book I wasn't too shocked by, I kind of could predict them a little bit. I did feel like this one was a bit more stably enjoyable from start to finish. Whereas this book, like I said, the first 350 or so pages are just a little bit challenging to get through. So I feel like I can't rank this higher than book 1 because it took me longer to read and I had a harder time at the beginning. I do think that the reread of this book and the reread of Era 1 in general is going to hit so differently and so much more enjoyably because I already know some of the things. And I think it'll give a little bit of those Easter eggs that come up and pop up throughout the beginning of this book a lot more enjoyment as a reader. So I do think that probably on the reread, I will like this book a lot more. But as a first read, I can't give it more than 3.9 stars. Still love it, still finishing the series, and I'm still just absolutely in love with the author, Brandon Sanderson, but I will say, it was just a challenge at that beginning. And again, Brandon Sanderson was doing something that I had not seen before, that he even mentions at the beginning of this book wasn't something he had seen a ton of before. He's seen a lot of the character arc adventure of dealing with the main issue, but once the main issue is done, they never actually do the hard part of exploring how do you rebuild a society that's been ripped apart with revolution and with revolting and with war. How does rebuilding look like? So I appreciate that he was doing something really challenging in this book. and I still really liked it. So I do recommend continuing in the Mistborn series if you decide to read Mistborn Book 1. This one does kind of conclude, and you could read it as a standalone, but keep going. All I'm going to say, though, on this book is that if you have a hard time at the beginning, especially the first half, it gets better, I promise. I remember my sister calling me up, and she's just a couple hundred pages ahead of me. She's finishing the Hero of Ages right now. And I remember her calling me up while she was reading Well of Ascension and asking me, hey, what did you say the ranking was for this book? And did you say it's supposed to be better than book 1? And I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. And I kind of flashed, and I was like, yeah, everyone online says that book 2 is even better than book 1, and book 3 is the best out of all of them. And she was like, okay. All right. And I was like, what does this mean? But she definitely said that, and I agree with her at this point in time, that it definitely picks up and gets better after you get past the halfway point. You have to get past it. You have to get 350 pages in, a little bit over halfway, before it really just goes for it and does a really good job with concluding this book, which I do think was really amazing. So overall, I still loved The Well of Ascension. I'm really excited to read The Hero of Ages. I did want to put this out, and I'll probably make a video exclusive to this question. But after I finish The Hero of Ages, my plan is to read 2 short stories in Arcanum Unbounded. The first one is The 11th Metal, which sometimes I see is placed after book 1, Mistborn, but sometimes I see people say that you should read it after the full trilogy. I'm going to read it after the full trilogy. I've also decided to read, and here's where my question comes in, I decided to read Secret History after Mistborn Era 1, and here's why. I've seen a lot of people say differing things about when you should read Secret History. I've seen some people say that you should read it after Mistborn Era 1 because it hits the most emotionally, because the characters in Secret History are in Mistborn Era 1. But then I've seen a lot of people say that the timeline for it should be read after Bands of Mourning in the second era of the Mistborn universe. And that if you read it before then, you'll get a spoiler for the last book, The Lost Metal, in that second era. But one of the key things I've seen also is that people say it depends on how long it's going to take between reading Mistborn Era 1 and Mistborn Era 2 for whether or not you should delay reading Secret History for reading it in the second era. And honestly, when I look at my TBR, I've counted out there's about 15 books, including Cosmere books, Elantris, The Hope of Elantris, Emperor's Soul, White Sand, and Warbreaker are all going to happen before I even start Mistborn Era 2. That and other books are going to come in place before I can get even into Mistborn Era 2. And so there's going to be at least 15, if not closer to 18 books between reading the 2 series. From what I've read online, if you're going to have that large of a gap between reading Era 1 and reading Era 2, you should read Secret History after Era 1. So that's kind of my current plan. If you've watched this video all the way to this point, maybe you can give a different perspective, or maybe you can support the decision I've made. Let me know in the comments. But I'll probably make a video specifically for this question to see what other people say, but that's kind of what I'm thinking with regards to my Cosmere reading journey at this point in time. So there you have it, my spoiler-free review for The Well of Ascension. I definitely will have a full spoiler review of the entire trilogy when I get to the end of it. I just don't want to start yet on that. I don't want to risk anybody giving spoilers for the Mistborn universe before I'm ready, so we're just going to do a spoiler-free review at this point in time. The last book for Era 1 is The Hero of Ages. Like I said, I've already started. I'm about 30 pages in, and I am having a blast. My sister said that this book just kicks off and just goes for it, and that she's like probably 90% done with this book, and she said that it doesn't stop. It's just really phenomenal and fantastic all the way through, and I'm really excited to read this. So, ooh, I'm so into it. So I will let you know how this goes when I finish it, and I'll give a spoiler-free review at that point in time too, and then wrap up my Mistborn Era 1 reading with these short stories. Stay tuned for my favorite quotes, spoiler-free, from The Well of Ascension, which I will be posting next. Keep reading what you love, and I will see you next time.